of Bangladesh in the last 2 decades or so, 3 decades, they found their way back into Bangladeshi politics. Initially, when the Shahbag protests had erupted, the call was for death penalty, and there's been a lot of debate about why death penalty, etc., and I'm not going to go into all of that. But by the time the movement presented a set of formal demands to the government on the 21st of February, about 2 or so weeks after its beginning, the demands had morphed somewhat. So death penalty was actually no longer on the table, and they were instead asking for maximum penalty. But the new demands had 2 dimensions. The first element of justice was still there, and as we're out of time, I'm not going to go into the first set of demands. But there was a second set of demands, which called for banning Jamaat Islami from politics altogether. And this demand not only involved banning Jamaat, but also student wage shibir, as well as all organizations affiliated with Jamaat, including stopping the foreign sources of funding. The demand also called for the immediate arrest of Jamaat Shibir activists who had gone on a rampage even before the verdict was officially delivered. So this essentially new emerging demand for the banning of Jamaat has 2 dimensions, actually. So the first is, of course, the historical dimension, Jamaat's role in the liberation war. But the second, there's actually a second kind of underlying undercurrent, I would say, that no one is talking about, which is Jamaat's current role in politics, which is repressive, as many would say, anti-democratic. I know that a lot of our speakers have already talked about Jamaat coming back into politics and all of that, but I'll take you briefly through the history of this. So following independence, Bangladesh's constitution established secularism as one of its founding principles, along with nationalism, socialism, and democracy. And the government subsequently banned Jamaat and all religious parties from from politics. In January 1972, a new law demanded that all collaborators be tried in a special tribunal, and the new Ahmadi government took an estimated 30,000 alleged collaborators into custody. About a year later, the government revoked the citizenship of Ghulam Azam, the leader of Jamaat Islami, and along with 30 others, and who later went into exile in Pakistan. In July 1973, the government passed the International Crimes Tribunal Act to facilitate the trial of the citizens of Bangladesh and the members of the Pakistani army involved in war crimes and crimes against humanity in 1971. However, as a result of diplomatic negotiations between Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh, Pakistani prisoners of war were later released in exchange for Bangladeshis living in Pakistan at the time. And later, in November 1973, in an effort towards reconciliation, the government declared amnesty for arrested collaborators, Bangladeshi collaborators, with the exception of those specifically charged with sedition, murder, rape, or similar crimes. So there is a kind of consensus that Sheikh Mujib forgave all the war criminals. That is actually not true. And there is some debate on how this happened, etc. But it wasn't really kind of they weren't just simply let go. Within a few years, however, Jamaat found its way back into Bangladeshi politics. In 1977, President Ziaur Rahman amended Bangladesh's constitution and removed secularism from politics. Secularism as state principle. And this kind of paved the way for religious parties to re-enter politics. President Zia, in an effort not to be a client of India, pursued a closer alliance with Saudi Arabia and the OIC, both for access to oil and other aid, as well as future leadership in the Islamic world. So it was almost like Bangladesh was trying to find its identity in a particular place in the world. In 1978, Ghulam Azam entered Bangladesh on a tourist visa, and in May 1979, Jamaat re-emerged as a political party. Between 81 and 87, the number of full members rose from 650 to 2,000, while associate membership doubled to 200,000. And in 1990, Jamaat joined a massive coalition of over 25 parties, including the BNP and Ahmadi, to overthrow the military regime of Ershad and install parliamentary democracy in Bangladesh. Basically, the main rationale for not having Jamaat come back into Bangladeshi politics or banning them altogether comes from the historical role in the war. But there's also a growing recognition of Jamaat's contemporary politics as repressive and undemocratic. Jamaat and Shibir have been involved in large-scale acts of violence, especially when the party has been part of coalition governments. Now, there is a counter-argument to this. Given the coercive and repressive state of politics in Bangladesh, most parties have been involved. Most party activists have been involved in this kind of violence. But even before the tribunal had delivered the verdict against Qadr Mullah, Jamaat had declared a strike, nationwide shutdown, and gone on a rampage, torching vehicles, clashing with the police. They demanded the dissolution of the tribunal and the release of the 7 leaders. The print media reported Jamaat's acting secretary saying, "Don't push the country into a civil war by delivering one-sided verdicts against our leaders. If anything happens against Qadr Mullah, every house will be on fire." On 15 February, the body of blogger and Shahbag activist Rajib Haidar was found by his residence. And though the role of the Jamaat Islami in this incident is not clear, it is certainly implied. However, it's worth noting that various groups were involved in the violence that occurred in the aftermath of Shahbag, including activists from both parties and the police itself. The Jamaat has also been connected with the Jamaat al-Mujahideen, a now banned Islamic militant group that demanded the imposition of Sharia law state in Bangladesh. And many arrested JNB members belong to Islamic parties, including Jamaat and Shibir. Some even confessed to the police that they were inspired by the speeches and writings of jihad leaders. Now, Though many charged war criminals have held leadership positions in Jamaat over the years, some have argued that Jamaat then differed from Jamaat now. And in an attempt to adapt to Bangladesh secular politics, Jamaat has recently changed some of its core founding principles. Its election manifesto of 2008 claimed that the party held both Islamic and democratic values, and the party constitution has been amended to acknowledge the independence of Bangladesh, as at one point the Electoral Commission would not let them compete in elections unless this amendment was made. Its policies in its website says, Bangladesh Jamaat Islami started working with a pledge to safeguard the independence, sovereignty, and Islamic values of Bangladesh, which became independent through a great liberation war in 1971. Consider the irony of this. However, whether the party has truly changed via their efforts to reflect Bangladesh's current political context remains subject to debate. Secondly, it's difficult to classify Jamaat as a monolithic entity with a single dimension. Its progressive leaders have certainly advocated the rights of women, along with some of the core principles of Islam, which include rights for women's mobility and involvement in political affairs. For example, the Jamaat's rural mobilization strategies demand an active role for women in politics. Jamaat leaders or activists actually take their message to women in the villages in pamphlets, advocating an active role for women in political life. And one pamphlet read, it's not enough for Muslim women to create a home and do good deeds on their own. Rather, they must reorganize themselves to rescue our children from the clutches of Western civilization. In order to save the citizens of tomorrow, your beloved children and mine from this vice and filth. So, it's a contradiction in itself, but certainly not advocating keeping their women at home. Finally, Jamaat's strength, both financial and political, has grown in the last decades. It's currently Bangladesh's largest political party, and historically it is allied with both ruling parties and held seats in the parliament. They enjoy a reliable following, and they've held 2 cabinet positions as the government's coalition partner between 2001 and 2006. And even if they scored just under 5% of the total votes in all elections, this really does not reflect the true following. It's actually much wider than that. And I'm not going to go into that right now, but you can ask me questions if you're wondering more about that. Shahbag's demands have also instigated a backlash from a growing grassroots Islamic force, and on the 6th of March, an Islamic group by the name of Hifazat-e-Islam conducted what they called a Long March, a massive rally in Dhaka, which actually was, there were elements of it nationwide, which one media outlet called the biggest ever showdown by any Islamic group in recent times. And I have a picture of the rally here, which Nayma helped put together. So the group presented a complex set of 13 demands, including punishment for the allegedly atheist bloggers who led the Shahbag movement, the banning of secular traditions, including the free mixing of men and women in public, and women's rights to work outside their home. So this is kind of, a completely different element of Islamic politics, and almost a growing new grassroots Islamic force. And this march kind of made appear in the sheer scope of this emerging grassroots Islam. Now, I know I have 2 minutes, I have to wrap up, but I kind of want to make one distinction here. A lot of the political activity that we've seen in Bangladesh over the last few years, they're urban phenomena. 1990, Shahbag, all of it. But most of Bangladesh's population lives in villages, and the structural conditions there, they're quite different. And even as NGOs come in and throw in tons of money and mobilize our women and empower our women, there is this growing Islamic force that is kind of silent, and it's only starting to emerge. And maybe Shahbag has opened up the doors for these movements to emerge, for this force to emerge, or maybe it was, it was bound to happen. That is kind of subject to debate. But I will not go into details, we don't have time, but I'll move on to what these questions mean for the future of Bangladeshi democracy and what their long-term implications are. So the government had initially looked into the question of banning Jamaat, and Shamim seems to think this is not really, was it you? Sorry. Yeah, you seem to think it was not really possible, or the AL might not really want to do this without committing political suicide. But it's important to keep in mind that the party's composition has also changed. A lot of the Shibir boys, undemocratic as they are, violent as they are, weren't even born in 1971 when Jamaat was responsible for all these events. Secondly, will banning Jamaat erase them from politics altogether? I mean, what's to prevent them from coming back as an underground force or coming back as opposition? And there are some reports that indicate that even when they were banned in 72, rather, or maybe 73, even when they were initially banned, they were trying to come back as with a more progressive identity. So the idea was to eliminate the leaders, not the party. And finally, what does the banning of Jamaat mean for the future of Bangladeshi democracy? So the question is, do secularism and democracy contradict each other in this case? And let's not think of this theoretically, let's think of this practically. In a country where the government amends the constitution at will, changes the laws at will, if you ban Jamaat today, who are we going to ban tomorrow? And that can be a challenge for any emerging force in the future of Bangladeshi politics.